Welcome back to another episode of the Life in the Right Lane podcast. Nicholas and Victoria here, trying out a little bit of a new set if you're watching us. Trying to figure out something to do in the apartment because we can't really control exactly what gets mounted or where things go. So seeing what we can do with what we have. Mm-hmm. We heard a really good sermon this past week about, especially in specific stories in the Bible. In this case, it was the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob was chasing blessings. So he came out of the womb and he was called Jacob because he was holding on to Esau's heel. And during their lifetimes, he was competing with Esau for his father's blessing and being able to inherit his father's things and his wealth and his property. And he ends up tricking, through his mom's coaching, tricking his father into blessing him because his father believed that he was Esau. At that point, Isaac was going blind and could not see. And so Jacob was chasing after that, and eventually he was given the birthright. And where the sermon went with that was that typically after a period of chasing after blessings, you tend to find crashing. And you tend to find that the things that you were running after, they don't seem to all come to you without any consequence. There's always something. And it got us thinking, especially with relationships. And I know we just hit a period where most universities are going back. High schools are either just started or they're less than a few weeks away from starting. And if you just graduated and you're starting your first job, or maybe you're in the first few years of your job, you're kind of thinking in your head, gee, I'm single and I really don't know what I need to be doing to find my person. I don't know whether God wants me to date. I don't know if I'm supposed to be dating right now. Should I be hanging out with this group of people? So you really have this tension that we both felt where it feels like you're supposed to get out there and do something. And we wanted to talk a little bit today about how, in our own experience, when we try to chase after things, it really never worked out in the end.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like this weird tension, like Nicholas was saying, because you can't just, sit in your dorm room or sit in your apartment and not do anything on your part and just expect God to just like plop somebody in front of you. But at the same time, anything can be a sin, right? Like good things that God intended to be good for us, we often distort to be a sin in our lives because we put that thing above God. And so I don't know if it was this way for you, Nicholas, but for me, going into every semester, it was almost like, well, who am I going to date? Like, I was talking to this guy at the end of last semester, like, maybe we'll get together this semester. And it was like an overwhelming, like, thing in my mind where that thought of like who I was going to marry, who I was going to date, who was going to pursue me at school was consuming my mind. And I was putting that above God. And instead of trusting him to lead me through the good and vulnerable and pure relationships that I was making at school, I was holding on to that control and saying, I've got to make this happen. I've got to figure out how to get this boy to ask me out or whatever, like I really wanted to take the reins on that instead of trusting to just pour into people, be who I was, continue letting God mold me and use me in ways that I didn't really know what he was going to do, and just trust that like he was going to lead me when the time was right. And obviously he did, and it didn't happen in school, and that's totally okay. Like it is really hard not to compare yourself when especially all of your friends have a date to the thing, or are dating someone, or have been just started dating someone, or at least are going on dates with people. And it's hard to not compare yourself to that and think, well, where's my person? Then you start looking around and trying to make things happen instead of just trusting in the Lord's timing.
Right. I don't know what your thoughts were going into college, but my parents and later my sister and her husband both met, got engaged and married when at least one of them was still in college. So I went in
crazy.
thinking this is where I'm supposed to meet my spouse. And my parents would make little comments, which they never intended for this to be like a lot of pressure, but it kind of was, where they would say like, oh, you're looking at this college, maybe your future wife's already there, and maybe you're gonna meet her and start dating when you start going there. Or they would throw comments like that in. And I don't know what your perception was going into college, but I personally thought this is where I'm gonna find my spouse.
Oh, 100%. And I went to a small Christian private school that was liberal arts, and there was a running joke at that school. And probably if you went to a small Christian school, you had this joke too. But it was the saying like ring by spring, because everybody that like went to school like by spring of your senior year, like you've locked it in, you've got your ring, you've got your spouse all lined up for post college. And it was just like this funny joke. And also, I know this is like everywhere, but a lot of girls get this like label that they're just in college to get their MRS degree just to get married. But honestly, I mean, that is so true. And I don't think that people mean to put this much pressure on you, but you do kind of feel it no matter who you are.
And especially as Christians, right? The world is pushing back their views on marriage, and they're either saying you don't need to get married until you're 29, 30, 32, because you need to think about you first, and you need to have fun with people, and you need to pursue your career.
Yeah.
But as Christians, we know one of our most important roles in life, if we have it on our heart, is to be parents, to raise up God-fearing children. And then even apart from that, we understand how in marriage we are representing what Jesus and his church look like. And there's a lot of hardship and challenge that comes with being married, but it's also one of the greatest gifts that we have in being able to see what he's doing and has done in our lives. I feel like as Christians, we have that pressure even more from parents, mentors, or just the culture that we have to get married early. And when we don't find that, especially if we've graduated from school, we've moved to a new town, and both you and I realized people are not around your age when you graduate college. Like, that is something that does not come easily. You'll end up wondering if there are any people in their early or mid 20s in your entire city, because you just don't see them.
Especially if you're a Christian, because there aren't, I don't know. I feel like right out of school, when you're getting life kind of underneath you, the tendency for young people is not to get involved and serve in a church.
Yeah.
If they are at church, it's kind of shuffle in, shuffle out. So it is kind of weird. You look around and you're like, where are all the 20-some-year-olds?
I know. And it really throws you, because you're thinking in college, especially if you go to a school like you did, or are in groups where you're with a lot of Christians, you're all going to church together. Mm-hmm. You feel like, okay, that's what it's going to be like when I graduate. And it's not. You are by far the youngest person until you have kids that are in high school, middle school, elementary school. So you're at this weird point, so many stages of our lives, where you're thinking, how do I even approach dating? It's on my heart to be married, but I don't really know what I need to be doing. So do I need to go hang out at bars to find people my age? Do I need to, as one of the girls from our small group put it this week, do I need to go to a specific church with a really great young adult program? And if I don't see someone there that I like, I go find another church. We tend to find that we try to control every situation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really cross our mind, what does God want us to do with our lives? How does he have this planned? We just think, I don't have this, so I have to go get it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the perspectives that we've been trying to put on every single day is not, I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done. I need to check this off my list. We've got to go run here. I've got to meet up with that person. I've got to do this at work. Putting all of that aside, starting the day with this mindset of, God, this is your day. What do you have for me? Please lead me. Let your Holy Spirit lead in the things that I do today and the people that I hang out with, the things that I choose to say or refrain from saying. Like, let your Spirit lead my life and my day today. And that is so hard to do.
So hard.
Just in our culture. And I feel like our culture kind of like, what's the word? Like, not eggs on, but like
grooms us.
Yeah,
it grooms us to be
us
all about the schedule.
Yeah, to be about the schedule, that you choose your own destiny. You have your own path in life. You carve it yourself. You decide this or that. And there is some truth to that. Like we've talked about a lot of lies from the enemy start with truth. He just twists it slightly, and then somehow we end up way far away from the truth because of those slight twists and turns throughout the time frame. Right. But so it starts out with, yes, that is true to some extent. We do have free will to choose how we use our words, things like that. And we also can choose joy in situations when we're going through trials. So there is some truth to that. But at the end of the day, God directs our steps. Like he guides us in life, and he, you may think that you have something planned for the day, but he has something entirely different, and it throws you off. But that's where we have faith, and where we trust him when we don't know where we're going and we don't know what the future is. So going back to the sermon, it was all about like what we're chasing in life, and to not be a heel grabber like Jacob, and to not be like always wanting the blessing that someone else has and always craving more and more. And it wasn't until he got to the point where he was arguing, kind of wrestling with God on this whole notion of only you can satisfy. And then that's when God was able to work in his life. When right. Jacob got to the end of himself and trying to make things happen for himself, and finding that he was getting lost all along the way, and turned around and he never ended up seeing his mom again before she passed, and like all these consequences like we're talking about that happen from the constant chase. It wasn't until he reached the end of himself in all of that he was able to learn the lesson, hey, God is the only one who can truly satisfy all of my needs, wants, desires, like everything in life. Good starts with him. Yeah.
Yeah, good starts with God.
What did I say? Did I say that wrong?
No, I'm just
yes,
I'm making one God. Of those like preacher sayings,
Oh, like the title of the sermon starts with God.
No. No.
What are you saying?
You made you referenced them the other day. You know how like big preachers, they'll have like
a little tagline?
A little tagline that they have, that like little catchy things they'll throw in their sermon. So I was just saying, good starts with God.
Oh, good starts with God.
Yeah, even though it really doesn't.
Starts with God isn't really catchy.
Good contains God? No.
Good starts with God. Yeah, I like the alliteration.
It's alliteration. It would be so cool if it was like G-O-D instead of G-O-O-D. You know what I mean?
God starts with God? That doesn't make sense.
No. Okay. Never mind.
We're getting off topic.
I was trying to throw you a bone there to throw in some of your little sayings from churches that you've seen. But
I'm sorry I let you down.
Yeah. Anyway, so where would you say you were when you finally flipped the switch to be able to recognize that God was the only one that was going to lead you into marriage, and it wasn't on you to go out and search for that person.
Well, honestly, I would like to say that I realized that at the end of every failed relationship when I was in college. But if we're being truthful, it did not happen for me, at least, because I was very stubborn and pushed back on God's plan for my life so many times. So it didn't happen until maybe a year, actually, probably like a year to a year and a half after I had already graduated. And that's one of the reasons why we want to like specifically speak to younger people who are in this position, because learn from our mistakes. As iron sharpens iron, like we're supposed to be like helping sharpen each other and point each other back to the Lord. So that's one of the reasons why we are so passionate about having a family one day, is that we get to help raise up these kids and teach them from our mistakes so that they don't have to learn the hard way that we did.
Right.
Obviously, sometimes you do have to learn the hard way. And so this was one of those situations where I had to waste so much time and so many years, so many tears, that I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did, on just trying to figure it out myself, instead of like releasing this grip that I had like dug my claws into. And I finally realized, if I was going to marry someone in life, if I was going to find the person that was truly like compatible for me, running at the same pace towards the Lord as me, I wasn't able to do that on my own. It had to be God leading me. And I think it was after I met a few people that I thought, oh, this is the person. Like, they love Jesus. They are an incredible person and friend. Their character is just immaculate. Like, they're just such a good man of God, would be a great husband one day. And then when those didn't work out, or either I was wrong about the person and their character didn't match up the way that I thought it did, or it didn't work out for other various reasons, that was when I started being like, okay, maybe I can't rely on my own understanding, like maybe I can't decipher whether or not this is the person for me on my own. Like, I have to be prayerful about this. I have to bring this to God, because we're fallible creatures, like right. We don't know, and we fail constantly every single day. We can't save ourselves. That's why we need Jesus. And it goes for like every situation in life. Like, you can't do it on your own. And I think that's why we go through certain seasons where we feel so desperate and we just hit rock bottom, to get us back to that point of like, this is why we need God, Yeah,
that's really a good point, that you had to undergo trial to be able to realize that you needed God. And I think we, as recently as last week, have been forced to see the many occasions where we have to give everything to God and realize that we can do nothing apart from Him.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was probably when I was living kind of in a completely different place, no real friends around me, completely on my own. That's where I realized that I can't depend on myself. I have to depend on God. And my faith has never grown so much so quickly as when I put myself in a literal and spiritual desert where there was just nothing around, and He was my only life. So
What desert were you in?
I don't know what the name of it technically. It's a desert-ish climate in northern Los Angeles.
I thought it was like an actual desert that you were at.
No, I mean there's a
dead. What is it? Dead.
The desert.
The desert.
The desert.
No, it was. I thought it was. Well, what was that called?
I went to one time Death Valley.
Death Valley.
But I did not live near there, nor would I want to.
Okay. I thought that's.
But
when
it was,
happened.
very hot, dry, didn't have rain for months. So
Yeah.
I'm going to call it a desert. I don't think it's officially a desert, but it's pretty close. So anyway, I think when you start to make that decision in your head that, okay, I'm going to stop pretending I have control and give it to God, then you start finding opportunities pop up. And it's so weird how it happens.
Mhm.
I remember moving back to Nashville and really not being worried about who I was going to marry at all. I had it in my heart to be married. I wanted to be a father, but I knew that God was going to have to lead me. So when I moved back here, I wasn't thinking for hours and hours about, okay, who's here that I can go try to get to know.
Mhm.
And it wasn't 3 weeks into living here that I was meeting up with Victoria, and the rest is history. So you
Yeah.
never really know what doors God will open. And that's one of the things we wanted to encourage you with today. If you're in this situation or you know someone in this situation, be encouraged that God opens up doors. He doesn't require you to go out and find them. He will put you in the right position as long as you let him lead you. And yes, that does mean you can't just stay in your house all day. You do have to do some of the work in the sense that, okay, get involved with your church, be around Christian friends,
Mhm.
put yourself in situations where you're serving him regardless. And by those things where you're putting yourself out there and making yourself have relationships that are not necessarily love relationships, you are able to find opportunities popping up. I think one of the coolest things that I realized was when I was at a church where
That's our dog, if you can hear that.
I was at a church where I thought maybe this was going to be a place where I met my wife, and I decided to start serving.
Mhm.
And when I didn't find that person, it didn't really matter because I already had a servant's heart and I was finding my place serving him. And that was freeing for me because now I wasn't just going to church to find a spouse or to go shop for my next date. This is a place where I get to serve God, to learn. And that changed my perspective fundamentally about Christian community and Christian groups. So I would encourage you, if you are coming out of college and you don't have any church, or maybe if you're going into college and you don't know many people, get involved in a church and keep in mind that you might be there and not find someone to date or marry. So find ways to serve and be joyful while serving that do not necessarily hinge on finding a lovely person.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are definitely action steps that you can take, like you're talking about, that help put you in good positions for God to, bring about something to happen in your life. But also, one of the things that helped me not put so much focus on looking at all the relationships around me was really looking internally and saying, am I ready to be in a relationship right now? Like, am I at the place, am I so I got turned around. Am I someone that I would be looking for?
Mm-hmm.
How is my character doing right now? Because honestly, if I look back in college, I'm so glad that you didn't go to my college or God didn't cross our paths then, because I was so, looking back, just like flaky and immature, and just there was so many lessons that I still needed to learn. And I was not ready to be in a serious relationship that was leading towards marriage. So also, work on yourself, like ask yourself those hard questions, like the characteristics that you're looking for in a person, in a future spouse, in a godly person to start dating. Are you those things right now? Like, those were really hard questions that I had to ask myself. And truthfully, the answer was no a lot of times. And so I really needed a lot of that time, years, to mature. and to really work on this connection with me and God first, because that's got to be stable and solid and firm as a foundation before he's able to bring someone else into your life. Because we heard a pastor say this one time, marriage is going through life with someone, figuring out problems that you wouldn't have had you not been married. And it's so true. So like, there's just so many more things that you face when you are married, when you are in a covenant relationship, when you do start a family, that you wouldn't have had you just been single. And so yes, single life is a lot simpler. So you've got to have that foundation strong before you add in a whole nother layer of like what life is going to look like and the trials that you're going to face.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's really good advice for someone in this situation. And, you know, we remember the time where we were listening to people saying this to us, and we would think in our heads, well, it's easy for you to say you've already found someone.
That's
but
so true.
Try to put that animosity aside, because we've been there, and think about how you can continue to grow closer to Jesus. And you know what? Just have fun. Don't put all this pressure on yourself that you need to find someone by this time. God will put you in the right situations if you let him, and he'll also make it more incredible and wilder than you can ever imagine. So take heart in the fact that whatever you can think of, God will trump it by what actually happens. It will be far better, far more different than you can at this point in time imagine in your mind.
Yeah, that's a good word. One more quick thing. Sorry, I just thought of something. Another, like, I guess you could say regret, but not in like a shameful way, you know, like I'm not hateful towards myself about it, but just something looking back that I'm like, I could have done that a lot better, was I was so focused in chasing a relationship and who I would date that it took me away from investing in female relationships and friendships and going deeper and being vulnerable with other godly women. So definitely use this time, if you're not dating someone, to pour in, and even if you are dating someone, to pour into same-sex relationships, because those friendships are necessary too, and being in community with other believers is so necessary and vital and helps us in our walk. So, you know, don't be so focused on chasing the opposite sex that you're not filling your life with good, solid same-sex relationships, because you can totally learn from girls and boys just as much as you can grow in a relationship. So
I definitely agree with that. Don't abandon it.
Yeah.
You need it, and you need it while you're married too. And that's something that we are trying to do a better job of, and get involved and find people that we can meet and get to know better that are of the same gender as each one of us.
Yeah.
So I think as you approach this new season, even if you are not dealing with this, be praying for people that you know that are, because it's not easy, and you probably yourself have been there. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you haven't already, leave us a review.
Which there are a lot of you who have not.
There have.
In order to reach more people, all of these podcast platforms like really look at reviews and obviously listens and all of that good stuff. But it would be so helpful if you wrote a review. Like, I always thought that was so annoying when people would be like, right, leave a review, like this and that, leave a comment. But it really is like so necessary in order to reach more people with the word of God. So please leave a review if this podcast has blessed you in any way. And we'll see you guys next week. Keep living life in the right lane.